On New Year's Day, I did in fact see the morning sun from the top of Mount Diablo. I want to be very clear though, it was not the sunrise over Mount Diablo. It was way closer to 9:30. And just to be extremely clear, I was not one of those people I passed on the way who were biking up or hiking up or walking up or running up the hill, that mountain. That was not me. I passed those people going up and going down in my car with heat and everything. But still, it was important to me to begin my year that way, with the largest view I could have. And I was there because in that place that has been sacred to the indigenous people of this region for so long, I wanted to embody my hopes for my own actions in a dawning year. I needed to touch what one venerable Zen master has called big mind. Now, I have made, as some of you know, New Year's resolutions for many years, starting when I was a teenager and when I wrote them on notebook paper, several sheets, so you can imagine how that went, and taped them on the back of my bedroom door, never to look at them again. So today I'm not so worried about resolution as I am about intentionality. Intention at the start of the new year is one of my practices. And it's interesting the way that inheritance works, because without really ever being much exposed to it, the more that I learned over the years about the Japanese customs around New Year's, the more I understood that somewhere in my being, in my cells, I knew them, and they were acting out through me. In the Shinto tradition, a number of these customs are based here, and there's an idea of kami, the spirit in all things in the world, which means, with intention, that you pay attention to all of it, life and all its accoutrements. You know, when you think about it in this world, this instant, constant on, crazy world in which we live, we need to be intentional about being awake, about being aware, and about being present to the real truths of our lives and the world, even the hard ones. We have a choice every single day whether to start our day with some peaceful words from an honored tradition, or whether to catch up on celebrity gossip on our cell phone before we even get out of bed. We can take a walk, or we can spend another hour before a screen, and it matters. We can choose to make some gesture of care for someone or something, and we can otherwise just simply ignore our surroundings. And the choice we make frames our lives. Being intentional is a form of mindfulness. And here's the thing. Even brilliant and very smart cognitive people need to be conscious of the choices they are making about how to be in the world. The lore has it that when the Buddha was asked, "Who are you?" he replied that that was the wrong question. So when he was asked, "Well then, what are you?" he replied, "I am awake." Intention is about waking up in your life. Now, if I had a minute of vacation for every time someone has told me that they don't have time for any kind of spiritual focus or practice, you would never see me work. And the thing is, it's not about dedicated time. What we do every day is, in fact, our practice. Through the choices we make, we show what we value, and our life takes the shape of those choices we make. Being aware and awake and present reminds us that our spiritual practice is not actually the 15 minutes we sit on the meditation cushion, as much as it is that time that we don't speak out of anger in the office when someone does something unbelievably annoying. Or that small act of kindness we make the effort to make, even though no one might notice. Or that courageous attempt we make to speak to someone estranged, even at the risk of arousing their wrath. Your life is your practice. The sacred reading you do in the morning has value if at 10 a.m. it stops you from giving a family member the full measure of your irritation at their mistake. If you give to every charity, and yet your basic approach to all the people in your life is one of emotional miserliness, then you do not have a practice in your life. If you can grasp the largest ideas in human history and study, and yet never make time to contemplate a larger frame than your own wants and wishes, you are not present to the full potential of being a human being on this precious earth. I think that sometimes those of us who think a lot and understand the world through our thought are worried that we will appear foolish if we do other kinds of awareness. And yet we gather here in this congregation week after week to do what my friend and colleague, the Reverend Arvid Straube, says, which is to learn together how to live and love well. And we do that with intention. It isn't foolish for thinking people to take the time to be present to their spirit and their embodied beings. The more, in fact, we learn about the science of our bodies, the more we understand that, for example, we hold strong experience in our bodies. And in fact, psychologists are discovering that for certain kinds of trauma, movement and behavioral therapies are much more effective than talking it out. The unfurling path of our knowledge is bringing, in fact, the teachings of science and the ancient teachings of spiritual traditions closer and closer together every year. And every day, we have a choice about how we are going to live. Roshi Sugado Suzuki of the San Francisco Zen Center talked about what he called big mind, which is the awakened and aware mind. And he says we need it as much in our small daily practices as we need it in our conscious times of trying to be that better person. In the Zen Center, he explains, the person who needs big mind the most is actually the person who works in the kitchen, because food is very important to everyone, and everyone who has ever been a cook knows it invites a lot of comment and criticism. So he suggests that the cook and the dishwasher may actually need big mind more than he does as the spiritual leader of the community. In the big ways and the small ways, we make choices. Maria Kondo, as I mentioned in the meditation, is in fact a surprisingly best-selling author. He wrote a book called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, the Japanese Art of Decluttering and Organizing. And it's an approach based on her Shinto belief system of setting up one's living space to make it a living practice. And she begins, when she works with people, by asserting that what they need to do is look at every possession they have and decide whether or not it still brings them a spark of joy. Every possession, think about this. And then declutter their life by getting rid of those that are no longer as relevant to them. When we delve into the reason that we can't let something go, she says, there are only two: attachment to the past or fear of the future. The question of what you want to own is actually the question of how you want to live your life. When we reduce what we own, we essentially detoxify our house, and it has a detox effect on our bodies as well. In essence, her idea is that this tidying of objects and ideas and possessions ought to restore the right balance between people and their lives. And I, for one, have been very glad to learn in my years of thinking about how we as Unitarian Universalists in particular can enjoy those practices that reconnect us with our spirit. I am glad to learn that the purpose of spiritual practice is not actually to help us be a perfect being. In fact, the best intentions will not prevent you from making mistakes, from hurting people, and from doing harm, whether you meant to or not. And in fact, in our very order of service, it says that next week we're going to have one service, when actually we're going to have two, despite our intention to get you accurate information. So there you go. Ritual practices do not keep that unholy mixture of Shinto and state power from being a destructive force. They didn't do that. A regular commitment to being intentional will allow us to notice when we can do what we want to do and when we don't do what we intended to do, so that we will notice that we need to make amends. Think about it, and imagine what a difference it would make in our homes, in our offices, and in our world if this was a common practice. We cannot control world leaders, presidential candidates, prominent entertainers, our bosses, our coworkers, and most certainly not our parents, siblings, spouses, and partners, or children. But we can, in fact, exercise a great deal of control over the decisions that we make about what energy we put into the world. We can make a choice when we decide to stay and learn today, for example, from the struggles of our Muslim neighbors and their truths. Or we can offer that gift of justice that our intern minister is inviting us to do, however small, to our larger community. And we make all those choices, knowing, as we inevitably do, only 3 days into this new year, that we will fall short of some of our intentions and need to start again. We also have daily outward signs of our most important inward commitments. A wedding ring serves, we had 2 wonderful anniversaries today, and a wedding ring serves to remind one of your most precious tie, and its call on you for certain actions. You don't really need to wear that ring to be married legally or intellectually or in any way. In the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, after a time of recommitment, people wear protection cords, simple strings that they tie around their wrist or their neck or their waist. And when I first heard about this, I thought that was kind of silly, because what were we trying to be protected from, and how could that possibly work? But Friday morning, when I was on top of that mountain, it came to me that the protection comes from the fact that when we act with intention, we protect our own integrity. And that is important in this world in which we live. The real truth is that when we protect our own hearts, when we remember that we should act with intention, we also need to release our attachment to how it all turns out, because that is the part that we can't control. Buddhist teacher Jack Kornfield says this: comes down to 2 things. We need to wake up to the wonder of our lives, and we need to be willing to let go of the outcomes, no matter what they might be. Practicing the life you want to make the one you wish people you loved lived will make your life more fulfilling if and only if you remember that it's not a kind of guarantee that the others around you or the natural phenomenon of the world will suddenly shift in your favor. To believe that would be foolish. People will still be harsh and hard. Choices will still be difficult. People will leave and die and prove disloyal. Dreams that you had will need to be relinquished. And yet it still matters that you reset and chart your own course. Because then when the disappointments come, you still have the ability to act with intention, and fewer of those disappointments will be from your own hand and heart. So I'm going to invite you to find right now the little red cord that you were given as you came in, and if you don't have one, the ushers are going to give you some out. I had to find mine. And I'm going to invite you to, though it might feel foolish to you, and you can decide not to, of course, but to just tie a simple knot in the center of your cord. And in the tying of that knot, let that represent something that you wish to be part of bringing more into in the world in this one and precious year of 2016. And then just hold on to it for a few moments. Here's the thing I believe as we start this year. We can live awake, aware, and present in our ordinary days, not just during times atop of mountains or on meditation cushions. We can be awake and aware and present on the BART, in traffic, sitting at Starbucks with a difficult family member, walking on a beautiful sunny day. Living with mindfulness allows us to honor the great gift which is our life, just as long as we have breath, and with every breath. Oh, and by the way, in case you didn't feel like you started out the first couple days of January the way you wanted to, in the Japanese tradition, there's this thing called the Little New Year's on January 11th, so you could try it again then. This unrepeatable year of life is going to need you to be mindful, for that will help you with whatever the year will bring. This community here needs your intentional engagement to be the place of transformation and care in the lives of hundreds of people. The world we share is going to need all of us to bring our best selves, all of ourselves, to its table. So hold on to the intention and release your attachments to the outcomes. Awaken, be aware, and be present to the fullness of your life.